Hello and welcome back to the Lowdown. Today we are talking about out-of-contract stars and the perfect destination for them. Coming up on today's show, we talk about whether Trent Alexander-Arnold's departure from Liverpool is inevitable.
That's a super team. In NBA, they'd call that a super team.
The Premier League club that Alphonso Davies should sign for. If you're getting the offer of Liverpool and Man United right now, you're going to Liverpool every day. And the perfect signing for City to solve their issues.
Bernardo Silva playing in that deeper role where the physical side of the game, no matter how good you are on the ball, I think he struggled with it.
Happy New Year and welcome to the Lowdown. It's 2025, everybody, and me and Mikey McCubbin are joined by Lowdown returnee and content superstar Mina Ibrahim. Welcome back, Mina. How you doing?
Good. I've had better days for United, but, Happy New Year, guys. Happy New Year.
Before the camera started rolling, there was a little bit of therapy going on between these two. There's a lot of pain at the moment, but we are on a different topic, guys. We could focus on United all week, but there'll be plenty more United content coming this month. So instead, we are focusing on the free agents that could move this January or could sign deals with their club or a future club for the summer window and where they could potentially end up. Mikey, what role are you playing today?
I am acting as the super agent today. Somehow I've managed to get all of these superstars on my roster, the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold, Van Dijk, KDB, etc. And you two are going to pitch different clubs for these players, where they should go next, who they should sign pre-contracts with ahead of the summer. And whoever gets the most nods from me comes out on top.
Absolutely. So we've slightly gamified it once again. Let's kick off, Mina, with the big talking point of the week, really. One of the big talking points of this window, Trent Alexander-Arnold. Where do you think he should go?
I think the answer is obvious. I think Real Madrid. I actually thought a couple of seasons ago Real Madrid would be the destination for him. I can imagine Liverpool fans' frustration probably with the recent news coming out. But yeah, I think Real Madrid just makes sense. Carvajal injured. To get the reins and to have the opportunity to be at a club like Real Madrid, playing with Bellingham, Vinicius, Mbappe, like that's a super team. In NBA, they'd call that a super team. So yeah, I think the obvious answer is that I think just when we get to it, out of the free agents for Liverpool, I think Trent is the one that's probably likely to leave, and I think Real Madrid just makes sense.
Yeah, I think he is the most likely. I think he's probably the most painful as well, given the fact that in 3 years' time, he's probably the most likely to still be world class. Van Dijk will be 34 next year. Salah will be 33. Trent is 26 right now, and he's in his prime. He's having such a good season once again. His expected assists this season are 0.33, which is roughly the same as Cole Palmer, who's having a phenomenal year as well. He's really improved defensively, not just this season, but I think this calendar year, or last calendar year, I should say, in 2024. He's just a phenomenal all-round player. He's now second in all-time Premier League assists for defenders. And first is Ashley Young, who doesn't really count as a defender for his entire career. He was a winger, in his Watford and Villa days, etc., and his Man United days as well. So an amazing Premier League player. If he does leave, I think he's left a huge legacy here. But he has said, famously on the sticker book, produced by our team, I should say, on Sky Sports Premier League, that one of his ambitions is to win the Ballon d'Or. And he's more likely to do that at Real Madrid than Liverpool, despite the fact that right now I think Liverpool are a better team than Real Madrid. So it is an interesting decision. I am pitching, just as a side note, I think Real Madrid's the obvious one. I would go to Real Madrid if I was him. But I think if they could afford him, Barcelona could really do with him as well. I think he'd be phenomenal at Barcelona. Look, the Carvajal situation's obvious. Vasquez is now 33. Fede Valverde's had to play at right back. Real Madrid have a clear need for him. Jules Koundé is playing at right back for Barcelona. I think he's a very solid right back, but he's not nearly as inventive and creative on the ball as Trent Alexander-Arnold. And I think he would really elevate that Barcelona 11. But having said that, Mr. Super Agent, I think I know which way you're going to go, because Barcelona just quite simply can't afford him. Dani Olmo can't even be registered right now.
Yeah, I'm afraid. I feel like just by trying to be a little bit different, you've lost this one too. Mina, you take the first round. I think Real Madrid, it is the obvious one. You could tout him to, a number of super clubs around Europe, Bayern Munich. He would certainly upgrade them there with Kimmich's contract winding down as well. Feel like right back options at Bayern, especially world class right back options, have not come easy to them aside from Kimmich over the last few years. So I think there's maybe more clubs out there than you expect, but Real Madrid, I'm afraid my client, if he's going to leave Liverpool, it's only going to be for Real Madrid, for Trent. And, we've seen the backlash from Liverpool fans, especially online. We've also seen reactions from non-Liverpool fans, not really understanding why Liverpool fans are unhappy. I think there's a middle ground there, isn't there? I think, the idea that Trent would leave Liverpool and then not be a Liverpool legend anymore, I feel like is a bit strange for a player who has won more trophies than many other Liverpool legends. So I think that's, I don't agree with that, but clearly it would be very, very painful for a Liverpool lad to leave Liverpool when they're at this moment in time. I think if this was last season with Klopp leaving, I think Liverpool fans would have understood more, probably would have supported a move more, whereas this season with Arne Slot kicking things off like he has, and Liverpool clearly the best team in the country, I can certainly see it. But Real Madrid is where we're going to send Trent Alexander-Arnold. Let's move on to speaking of Bayern Munich, Leroy Sane out of contract this summer. This is someone who I've suggested in previous episodes as an option for Arsenal potentially. I think there were a number of clubs around Europe who could do with his services. Dougie, should we start with you?
Yeah, I've got work to do.
Yeah.
I've got work to do. And look, Leroy Sane, I think, was really, really underrated during his time at Man City. Look, he was injured for the entirety of his final year there, but the previous 2 seasons was over 10 assists in both of those campaigns. He got over 10 goals in one of them as well. And since missing 50 games in that final season at City, his injury record at Bayern's been really, really promising as well. He's never missed more than 8 games in a single campaign in Germany. But I think if you're talking about how is he playing right now, Bayern fans are getting quite frustrated with him. And it does feel like the end is nigh for Leroy Sane at Bayern. I don't think they'll necessarily renew his contract. Look, the impact of Michael Olise since he's gone there has been, incredible. I think he's been their outstanding winger so far this season. Jamal Musiala's contract's a little bit uncertain as well. He's been linked with Man City quite a lot. I personally wouldn't probably join Man City right now, given the fact their future's a little bit uncertain. Don't know where they're going to be at. But it does feel like Leroy Sané's time at Bayern Munich is coming towards an end. He's 12th for league minutes this season. He's only started 5 games in the league. 5 goals and 1 assist in 19 games is good, but it's not exceptional. And Sané at Bayern is a tale of sort of moments and 6-month patches, but never really an entire season of real quality. I think this time last year, he'd had a phenomenal start to 23-24, really tailed off towards the back end of the year. And this year, he's only created 11 chances, which is 9th at Bayern. And his 39% dribble success rate is down from 56% last season as well. So he's not scoring as regularly as he did. He's not creating as much as he did. And his dribble success rate is right down. So I think whereas before you'd maybe be like, oh, he's a great fit for a club like Liverpool, even though they've got great depth at left wing. I don't know whether he gets that move anymore. I think he goes to a club slightly lower down. And I think a club that could really look at him and really benefit from his experience and quality is Spurs. I think they are potentially lacking another world-class player for 2-3 years' time. I think Kulusevski's really on the verge of being world-class. Dominic Solanke, I think, is a really solid forward as well. But who do they have that can reach those really top echelons of performances? And Sane hasn't done it consistently, but he's done it in the Premier League beforehand. The only issue is he's supposedly on £280,000 per week. He's paid actually the same as Kylian Mbappe is at Real Madrid, but Mbappe obviously had that massive signing-on bonus. And apparently his priority is La Liga. He really wants to go to a La Liga club. Barcelona is supposedly his dream destination. Again, as I touched upon with Trent, I'm not sure they could afford him as well. But he'd be a step up for Spurs. Even this season in a down year, 0.7 expected goals and assists per 90. That's only topped by Son in the Spurs squad. And I think he'd be a signing that would really excite Spurs fans as well. So Leroy Sane to Spurs, given the fact they're in mid-table at the moment, I think would be an amazing coup.
Oh, that is interesting. That is an interesting one. I didn't see that one coming. Mina,
I
have you
don't
got
know.
any surprises for me?
It might be a little bit of a surprise because I think you mentioned a lot about Leroy Sane. I feel like he's going on his decline from what he was as a winger, especially I feel like people hold on to the Leroy Sane at City in that explosive period that he had, despite the fact that after a certain point towards the latter stages of his time at City he started to dip in form. Wages would be an issue, but I think the quality that he adds, the experience that he adds, I look at AC Milan and I think, well, Rafael Leao's out injured. They got a 19-year-old Alex Jimenez playing on the left. I think in terms of quality, in terms of experience, could that be a destination and an option for him, for a team that's struggled in the league in comparison to, you know, the Napolis and the Inters? So I'm saying AC Milan, but I did kind of explore the idea of maybe Barcelona and Arsenal, a reunion with Arteta, so some extra reinforcements up front, but I don't think Arsenal is realistic for him. I think they need to stop taking City's previous players. And Barcelona financials, I thought they couldn't afford it. So I thought of AC Milan for those reasons. I think with Raffaele out injured with a muscle injury until January, I feel like his experience first with winning league titles and just being a force is something that could be a good option for him. And like you mentioned, he's only missed 4 games this season to injury, so he's not really an injury-prone player. It's just about getting consistency out of him. So I'm going to go with AC Milan.
Yeah, certainly hasn't been fancied by Company until very recently, when injuries allowed him back into the side. And I guess there was that horror injury at Man City in that last year. But aside from that, fairly clean bill of health. Both quite out there options here. I wasn't expecting Spurs to come up. I do see the logic with Spurs. I think that attack could do with a bit more experience. I think, you know, someone like Timo Werner playing out on the left, I don't think he has a long-term future as a starter at Spurs either. So I do like that Spurs shout. But thinking about my client here, I think I do just like Milan. And actually, when I was looking into it earlier, Milan was one of the 3 clubs that I did have in mind potentially, and especially with that Leao injury. I think, especially with how competitive Serie A is right now, all it takes really, I think, in the next year really is a couple of really good signings, and you can go from being the 4th, 5th best team in the country to being potentially the best team in the country as well. And I just really like that forward line. You know, I would love to see, you know, Sane, Leao, Pulisic linking up together, Reinders as well, and the fact that he can play across the forward line is really useful as well, isn't it? Because if Pulisic gets injured, if Reinders gets injured, then you can see Sane stepping into that. So yeah, Mina's edged it once again, I'm afraid, Duke.
Brutal.
2-0.
Wow.
Let's start with you again, Duke, because you're really up against it now.
No,
we're going on to a bit of a contentious one here. Amad Diallo. Now, I will say this is a bit of a hypothetical. This is maybe one for the future, maybe, because United do have an option to extend his deal by a further year. Noises before Christmas were that a new deal was also on the verge of being signed. No official announcement as yet. So as it stands, Amad Diallo is still very much gettable, and also given the situation at United at the moment, my client is also, potentially open to a shock move elsewhere. Talk of United getting relegated this week, probably a bit premature, but United are arguably at their lowest point, in their modern history. So Amad is, in this hypothetical world, open to listening to offers. What do you have for me, Dukes?
Well, yeah, as you say, to make perfectly clear before there's some furious typing in the comment section, Man United don't want to get rid of Amad Diallo. And Amad Diallo, if I was him, I probably wouldn't leave either, if I'm totally honest. Like, he's got that option of another year in his contract. It sounds like he's going to be rewarded for what has been a brilliant breakout campaign. Yes, he got some minutes last year under Ten Hag, but this has really been his campaign of really establishing himself. I think he's been United's best player. That's not saying very much. Probably Nusayr Mazraoui, Manuel Ugarte in recent weeks has been okay, but there's very slim pickings in that. But, if we are touting him for a potential move, I think a club like Newcastle have been crying out for a right winger for a long, long time. Miguel Almiron is no longer part of the first team picture. Murphy, I think, is a really able backup, but I'm not sure he's got the sort of star quality on a consistent basis to get them back into the Champions League contention. Amad Diallo would be a statement signing for Newcastle. And you look at his underlying numbers this year, and they're really, really promising. It's 5 shot-creating actions. That's the most at United so far. Only Salah, Saka and Anthony Robinson have laid on more Premier League assists, which, given the fact that he's played a lot of football at United this season, but he's not always been a starter as well. I think that's really, really impressive. 5 goals and 7 assists in all competitions now for Amad Diallo. And he would be a statement signing for Newcastle. And right now, as proven by that game the other night, which could have really got pretty embarrassing in the first half in particular, United did rally slightly in the second half, as they had to respond to what was a real mauling in the first half. Newcastle are ahead of United right now. And Newcastle, up until the last month or so, weren't even having a particularly good season themselves. So if Newcastle came calling, I think Amad Diallo should stay at United. But in this hypothetical world, it'd be a great fit for him.
I actually really like that suggestion, Dukes. Mina, what would you have in mind for?
I have to issue a disclaimer because, like you said, I do not want Amad Diallo to leave. I don't want people to get upset about me suggesting that he should go to XYZ club. Yeah. If he was to leave, I'd like to see him leave the Premier League. Just,
for pain purposes.
I wouldn't want him to. I look at different teams, and obviously coming from the Atalanta youth team, I actually think Napoli would be a good destination for him. I think that front line with Lukaku, Kvaratskhelia, I think, the creative outlet that he could have, Lobotka behind him, the reunion with Scott McTominay, having the overlapping of, Di Lorenzo on the right-hand side. I think Matteo Politano, he'd be an upgrade on him. He'd be an absolute upgrade on him. Of course, with his experience, that can be someone that he can take under his wing. But even if Amad left and signed a 4-year deal with another team, he'd be 27 after that contract. So he'd still have some prime years left in him. But I do think that the Italian league, for someone who's so able of, keeping the ball in tight spaces, and, for teams that, you look at the Juve system and other teams in the Italian league who like to play, intense, high pressing, kind of forcing possession off an opponent, I think Amad would flourish in that league. He's doing it in the Premier League. He could do it there. I looked at Spain and maybe France, and I thought, no, those leagues, I couldn't see him going there. So I'm going to say Napoli for him.
Interesting. Another strong suggestion there. I do like that. I think, like you say, Napoli, I think, do need an upgrade on the right wing, as do Newcastle. I think he would be a good fit at both clubs. I do feel like, though, and you mentioned there, Mina, the pressing football, that's exactly what kind of came to mind when you mentioned Newcastle, Dukes. And we saw it, didn't we? In Newcastle's win over United, just how streets ahead they are in terms of their pressing under Eddie Howe. And I feel like Amad, he's really found his feet in the Premier League. In some ways, I think he maybe wouldn't want to leave the league, actually. I think he's really cut out for Premier League football. Also has lived in the Northeast before, of course, playing for Sunderland.
And I don't think that would. I don't think, what am I doing?
But
I mean, my own club.
Yeah, you really have. But I mean, he was only a loan signing, wasn't he, at Sunderland? I don't think Sunderland fans would be too put out. Well, they probably would be a little bit.
Comments are going to be furious at me.
But nevertheless, I think he wouldn't be that much of a culture shock moving back to the Northeast. And I think he'd be great there. I think he would be a very clear upgrade on Almiron. He's almost like Almiron, but just with the finesse of a really top quality winger, but with all that same tenacity and hard work that Almiron has offered over the years. So, I'm not going to send all of my clients to Serie A just yet. So, Dougie, you've clawed it back 2-1.
Needed it.
Who are we moving on to next? Sorry, my list has gone
Alphonso
blank.
Davies.
Oh, here we go, yeah.
Alphonso Davies. Mina, do you want to kick off with Alphonso Davies?
Yeah. I was going to take the easy route out because I think Real Madrid need an upgrade on their left back situation, but there's no way anyone looks at Man United this current situation and think they do not need an upgrade. In wing-back position, just in general, right wing-back, left wing-back, I think, his ability to drive the ball forward, he's so good on the ball for a full-back. We see him play as a winger for his national team. And you look at Manchester United in particular on the left-hand side, since Ruben Amorim's arrival, yet to create anything from that left-hand side in particular. We've seen Amad Diallo play as a right wing-back, but on the left wing-back situation, it's really dire. So I think Alphonso Davies to Manchester United now is the project worthy to kind of sell to him. When you look at other teams that potentially could target him, like I mentioned, Real Madrid, Man United are going to need some serious pulling factor to bring him to Carrington, but it just makes sense. Alphonso Davies to Man United just makes sense.
Interesting, yeah. I mean, we spoke about Alphonso Davies to Man United, I think, when Ruben Amorim first came in and things were looking a little bit more optimistic at Old Trafford in terms of that squad building. Who knows? Maybe United will have a big month and will become that project, that improving project that they want to attract players to. But right now, it is a difficult sell. But nevertheless, stylistically, I agree, Mina. I think he'd be perfect for an Amorim team. Dougie, have you got someone else in the Premier League or elsewhere?
Got a better move for him in terms of league position, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, Real Madrid, I did also consider like Mina, like Furlong Mundy's out of contract as well. Fran Garcia, I think is a solid player, but maybe potentially upgradable for sure. What was interesting about Alphonso Davies is that he was known as being quite injury prone, and actually between 2021 and 22-23 he missed 51 games across those 3 seasons, but actually in the last 2 he's only missed 6. So he's been really, really solid in terms of his availability. This year he's played in 21 games out of their 24 in all competitions, and I think he's been really solid once again. I think, as Mina says, he's really known as this really explosive sort of fullback, so like just absolutely breathtakingly fast. But actually on the ball, his pass completion rate, his ability to retain the ball in tight spaces, his progressive passes has actually always been really underrated. He's a really, really complete all-round footballer. And for me, Liverpool need a left-back going forward. Andy Robertson is clearly in decline. He's been an amazing servant for Liverpool, but he hasn't been at his best for 2 seasons now. Is Tsimikas the long-term heir there? I'm not so sure, as solid a player as he is. Andy Robertson's also 31 in March. If Liverpool could get Alphonso Davies on a free signing, that would really compensate for the potential loss of Trent Alexander-Arnold on the other side as well. And I think he would be excited and enticed by the opportunity to go to Liverpool. And if you're getting the offer of Liverpool and Man United right now, you're going to Liverpool every day.
Okay, this is a tough one. I think
Head over heart, come on.
Well, yeah, no, for sure. And also I need to look out for my client, but I do think I do still I think Liverpool, the only sticking point for me is the style. You know, Arne Slot likes his fullbacks to be a bit more conventional. He would maybe have to rein Alphonso Davies in a little bit. But like you say, Dukes, Trent in this scenario is a Real Madrid man now. And potentially the left back will now be given a bit more license to roam if Liverpool were to sign. Well, even if Liverpool weren't to sign a more conventional right back, Conor Bradley is a bit more of a classic fullback than someone like Trent. And to have him and Alphonso Davies bombing down the wings would be a real sight to behold. I think, yeah, if this was 2 months ago, I think I would have chosen Man United for Alphonso Davies, but the situation there is it's just too volatile. I know some of the talk around United has been overblown, but it now feels uncertain as to what the situation at the club is going to be in the summer, right? You know, Amorim, I think, will probably still be in the job in the summer, but this run of form has been, you know, so bad, and you know, the negativity around the club is only building. And so I feel like bringing in Alphonso Davies into that environment, at least at this stage where we don't know what the situation is going to be at the club in the summer, I think is too big a risk. So going with you, Dukes.
Looking out for the client.
2-2, Alphonso Davies to Liverpool. Speaking of Liverpool, Virgil van Dijk next. Now, this could be a really interesting one. Obviously, an ageing centre-back, but still pretty much at the top of his game, isn't he, Virgil van Dijk? Mina, why don't you kick off this time?
I don't want to be taking the easy route out, but I'm going to say Liverpool. But I'm going to entertain the idea of another possible destination, which for me is Real Madrid. I think Virgil van Dijk is still at the top of his game. You look at this season, 70% duels won in the league so far, 74% in aerial duels in particular, high interceptions, you know. He's not declining. Despite what his age is saying, Virgil van Dijk is not declining. And I look at Real Madrid, for example, and unfortunately they've been kind of tarnished with all these injury problems in the team right now. You know, just imagine a backline of Van Dijk and Rudiger.
I mean, that would be
Just imagine that.
Yeah.
That's the only other destination I can think of. I looked at other teams. I looked at, you know, the French league. I looked at Italian league. I looked at the Dutch league, etc. And none of them made sense. I thought of maybe Barcelona because, you know, I think they need an experienced centre back as well. But we'll come to that later. But for me, if it's not Liverpool, then probably Real Madrid. But I see him staying.
Wow. So Van Dijk and Trent to Real Madrid, you're touting.
That would be a serious heist.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know if Liverpool will be able to recover from that emotionally. Dougie, where Mina said there, you know, Barcelona, you know, other teams in Europe who potentially need defensive reinforcements, especially someone with the experience of Van Dijk. Have you gone for?
Yeah, I went for a different
club?
one as well. I think Real Madrid's a good shout, but they've already got David Alaba, who's in his 30s. They've still got Eder Militao. They've got Rudiger as well. do they need Van Dijk to the same extent as another side that I'm going to mention, which is Bayern Munich? You know, Bayern Munich have spent big on centre-backs in the last few windows, like Ito this summer, who's been injured, sadly, Kim Min-jae the year before that, De Ligt the year before that. And Kim Min-jae and De Ligt did not work out as they planned at all. I don't think Kim Min-jae has been particularly good even this season as well. I think he's winning 30% of his challenges. That's really, really troubling. For any elite centre-back, you'd want it to be at least above 55%, at least, well, hopefully, but even above 60%. So Van Dijk, I think, comes in to Bayern Munich, into a system that I don't think he'd struggle with too much. I know there's a very high line at Bayern. I know there's a lot of passes going through those centre-backs, but that is something that he has dealt with both at the national team level and with Liverpool in the past, with Klopp. And they already have the best defence in Europe by expected goals against. They've got the only Napoli, and I think it's Atletico Madrid, have conceded fewer goals than Bayern Munich so far this season. And yes, they played fewer games than a lot of those sides, but they are looking really solid in the Bundesliga at least. But I think Kim Min-jae, there's no reason why he can't become a good player at Bayern Munich. But I think 2 years, sort of finding his feet, coming in for Van Dijk, who's going to be rotated a little bit more, I think that's a really nice fit. And Eric Dyer as well, who's their backup centre-back at the moment, is turning 31 this month. So I just feel like there is a potential space there for Van Dijk, more so than there is so at Real Madrid.
Interesting. I really like that shout, actually, Dukes, with Bayern. I think there is more space for him. Yes, the injury problems at Real Madrid over the last 2 years, really, across that back line have been worrying, but I do feel like Van Dijk, just slightly better fit at Bayern. What I really like as well is the idea of Van Dijk playing under Vincent Kompany. You know, Vincent Kompany kind of passed the baton to Van Dijk as the kind of defining Premier League centre-back of his era. There's a lot of romance in there. So I do really like that as a bit of a combination, having, you know, Kompany as manager and then Van Dijk coming straight in and being a leader in the dressing room straight away. I think Van Dijk would really, really thrive in a dressing room like that. And we've seen, you know, I think Bayern's dressing room culture has, you know, been in need a little bit of a new voice, like, you know, a calming voice like Van Dijk. There's been too much, I think, infighting, I think, in the Bayern dressing room over the years, especially with managers and players being split over which manager they're backing or whether they're backing the manager or not. Whereas I feel like with Real Madrid, I don't know whether Van Dijk would. Well, he probably would still have a good effect on that dressing room. Let's be honest. You know, especially with the likes of Vinny and Mbappe there, someone who can, someone who's got a really good head on his shoulders, kind of keep those players working really hard, but. Yeah, I just feel like Bayern's a slightly better fit, I'm afraid, Mina.
No, so I see it. I see it. It's okay. I see it.
But 3-2, Dukes.
The comeback is on.
Well, the comeback is on. Let's go on to another Bayern Munich player in Joshua Kimmich now. I mean, linked with Manchester City before. I think we've touted him as a potential Liverpool pickup as well. Where have you gone, Dukes? Have you gone for either of those clubs or somewhere else?
I didn't, actually. I thought those are good shouts for sure. But I had another destination in mind. You know, this is a guy that's turning 30 in February. Still got plenty of more years at the top of his game, especially because his game has never really relied on pace as well. It's more about intelligence and his passing range and his dead ball delivery, etc. He spent the last 10 seasons at Bayern. What a player for the club. 414 appearances. He's made at least 39 appearances in each of the last 8 seasons, close to 100 caps for Germany, 110 assists for the club. It's absolutely mind-blowing from right back or central midfield. Incredible. Interestingly, though, Tuchel saw him as a right back, whereas this season he's being back used in midfield. And that's where I'm sort of looking for a potential destination. I wasn't really considering him as a right back. And this season, his pass accuracy is absolutely superb. It's the best of his career. He's winning 68% of his tackles as well. That's the best of his career. He's playing really, really well. And he's also first for passes into the final third, first for progressive passes. So basically, you are looking at probably, aside from Rodri, and with Rodri injured, probably the outstanding midfielder in Europe, I say. And Kimmich, I think, is really underrated in this country for some reason as well. Who should sign him? On a free transfer, it's almost impossible to do, but he is a really good fit for Barcelona. Marc Bernal is injured. 17, 18-year-old got injured earlier this season. Frankie de Jong, I don't think it's ever been the 6 that they probably thought he was. I think he's much better in a box-to-box role, even as a box crasher, which he did under Ronald Koeman. I think Joshua Kimmich is the sort of signing that kind of puts Barcelona back on a more even keel with Real Madrid in terms of star quality as well. Look, it's going to be almost impossible to do financially, but if they could find a way, if there's some more VIP seats to sell off in the new camp, Joshua Kimmich would be an amazing fit for Barcelona.
Interesting. I think stylistically, yeah, good shout. And also, I don't know, maybe, Kimmich would be able to compromise on wages a little bit. It's not like you're signing, it's not like we're signing someone from a Premier League club where the wages are going to be massively inflated.
He also, I should have added, got 17 assists in his one full season under Hansi Flick at Bayern.
Not bad at all. That Bayern team was really good, and linking back up with Lewandowski. Mina.
I did have Barcelona, but I also had Man City because I can't look past Man City's midfield. Now, obviously, the uncertainty around Manchester City's future, that's a different question. But you're looking at Rodri being out injured, and honestly speaking, I think Mateus Nunes is a good player. I think Kovacic is a good player. I think this season we've seen actually Bernardo Silva playing in that deeper role where the physical side of the game, no matter how good you are on the ball, I think he struggled with it at some points during the season. So I think Kimmich to City is what I'm going to go with. But I did have Barcelona down as one of the other potential teams, but I can't look past all the levers that they have to pull to bring in players.
Yeah, City's a good shout.
Yeah, this is maybe the toughest decision because I think he's a brilliant fit at both clubs, and both clubs need Joshua Kimmich. I think it's really that simple. God, this is really tough.
Think about your client.
I'm thinking about my client here, and the thing is, look, Joshua Kimmich would be, I think, amazing at Barcelona.
Is he going to get paid though?
Is he going to get paid?
He might have to defer his wages.
Yeah, and I still think also the opportunity to link back up with Pep Guardiola. The guy who really solidified him as a midfielder at Bayern Munich. I think that has to be taken into consideration as well. So I'm going to go with you, Mina. 3-3.
Absolutely thriller.
All to play for here. Great suggestion so far, by the way. On to, I guess, one of our, slightly not so much superstar names, but someone who has had superstar potential for a while. Lots of question marks over this guy, actually, because, he's was available for relatively cheap last summer out of Lille, but no one took them up on the opportunity. He could have been got out there for around £20 million or so. Jonathan David, Canada's star, number 9. I think he's split opinion over the last few years, Jonathan David, but potentially just because he's played in Ligue 1, and Ligue 1 has this kind of unfair reputation for, players doing very well there and not doing so well when they leave. Let's start with you, Dougie. Who do you think could do with his services?
Yeah, I'm pleased with this one. I think it's quite a good one, if I don't say so myself. He's in his 5th year with Lille, 24 years old. His goal return is really, really solid. So 13, 19, 26, 26. And this year he's on 17 in 26.
Amazing.
Really, really impressive. And this year he's already scored goals against Atletico Madrid. He's scored goals against Juventus. He's scored goals against Real Madrid. Fenerbahce as well. Less so of a test than those ones as well. But he's playing really, really well. He's very, very consistent. He can also play out wide as well, which is quite helpful, I think, in this. Who should sign him? Newcastle. Alexander Isak. It doesn't feel like Alexander Isak is going to be a Newcastle player for 3 more years, even necessarily another year. I think Alexander Isak will be one of the most sought after strikers in the world this summer, along with probably Victor Gyökeres. It feels like he is the most gettable of that sort of coming up to elite territory. And Callum Wilson is 32. He'll be 33 in February. Callum Wilson has been, as my fantasy football team and my draft fantasy football team suggests, he's been unable to play. He's been unable to contribute. I've needed him, and he hasn't been available whatsoever. He's only played 58 league minutes for Newcastle so far this season. Isak is their only player with more than 5 league goals. Isak has not a patchy injury record, but he occasionally picks up muscle injuries, etc. Bring in Jonathan David on a free. You prepare for Callum Wilson's future departure for sure, and your potential departure of Alexander Isak. I think it's a tap-in.
Interesting. I wouldn't be so confident that Isak's going to leave this summer. Personally, I find it hard to see which club's going to come in with that offer that Newcastle can't turn down. Maybe Arsenal, but we'll see. I don't know whether Arsenal will ever sign another centre forward. Mina, who have you got for me?
I had Newcastle on my list, and I promise you I'm not lying, but I'm going to say PSG. I look at PSG this season, and Kolo Muani's out of the door, Gonzalo Ramos. He hasn't really been the striker that PSG thought they were probably getting. Luis Enrique likes his system in a particular way. If you look at the last 3 league games, they've started with Dembele as a false nine, and Desire Doué as a false nine. And one thing I like about Jonathan David, like you said, 17 goals this season, 11 in the league in 15 games, which is a good return. And outside of his ability to score and be a box presence for wide players, he's also able to drop into the little spaces in the 10 and play balls out to the wide channels, which if you've got Dembele, if you've got Doué, if you've got Barcola running in behind, I think that would be good. I'd use that same logic as well for Newcastle with Anthony Gordon, etc. I thought of the idea as well for West Ham, because I look at their situation right now. I think they need a striker, and again, having Kudus, having Bowen. I think Bowen played as a striker in the most recent game, so I thought West Ham could be a destination as well. But Jonathan David's a funny one, because every summer I hear his name linked to leaving, but he's just never left Lille, and he's only 24 years old, which means if he's having double-digit goals consistently in his career for the last 3-4 years, then hopefully he'd be able to continue that. So I'm going to go PSG, and also because I think transitioning from one French team to another French team might be easier than Kolo Muani, who when he came from Frankfurt, and Ramos when he came from the Portuguese league. I think he'd be able to adapt a lot quicker than maybe the other strikers that they've brought in historically.
Interesting. This is another really tough choice. I think they're both excellent suggestions. West Ham, I feel like, would have been the one that would have won it for me there. I think
that's where strikers go to die, though.
It is, but I think Jonathan David has more than Füllkrug. He has more than Scamacca had. Like he's a much more well-rounded player, I think. And like you say, can play out wide as well. There's a little bit more. He's got more similarities to Michail Antonio, who had experience of playing in other positions and good at holding the ball up. Well, I mean, he's a much better striker than Michail Antonio, but in terms of being a more well-rounded footballer in general, I think he has those kind of qualities. So I would have probably gone for West Ham myself. So you both missed out there.
No points for either of us.
I'm going to go for a slightly safer option here. I'm going to go for PSG though. I think like you say, the adaptation. There's not too much need for adaptation. I think as well. Like
Luis Enrique doesn't even like strikers.
But I think you'll like Jonathan David. His record in Ligue 1 is just too good to ignore here. I think. If you want someone on the cheap for PSG, who is a team player, who will also bag you 25 goals in the league at least a season. Going from Lille, who have, he's played a number of different styles at Lille over the years, to a PSG team that is used to just dominating the ball and dominating games in Liga. He's got that Champions League pedigree as well now. I think he'd be a really good fit at PSG. I know he's up against other strikers, but yeah, like you say, I think Kolo Muani and Gonzalo Ramos, the jury's still out on them in terms of their long-term futures at the club. I think he would also be a decent fit at Newcastle, but I think this is a safer option for him career-wise, PSG. So is it 4-3 now to Mina?
4-3 to Mina.
Dougie, you're on the back foot once again.
Yeah.
We are going now to, well, here we go. What a one to win this would be. Mo Salah.
Yeah, this is huge, obviously. I don't think Mo Salah should leave Liverpool. Liverpool don't want to lose Mo Salah. Since the start of November, 12 goals and 10 assists in 12 games. 22 goal involvements in 12 games. It's just insane how well he's playing right now. Full credit to him. He's put himself firmly as Ballon d'Or favourite, let alone PFA Player of the Year favourite. And in terms of his Premier League all-time status, it's secured. He's 8th in terms of all-time goals. He's now 3 behind Frank Lampard in 6th. He's now 10th in the Premier League assist charts with 82. He's just been absolutely phenomenal for Liverpool. Don't need to really go over that once again. Where he goes next, the league that has always been linked with him is Saudi Arabia, but I'm sorry, you can't go there in this form. You just can't. No one has joined a Saudi Arabian club at this level. They just haven't. They've all been on the decline in some way or another. Credit to Cristiano Ronaldo. He's a freak. He's still going, but he's not the same player that he was 5 years ago. Mo Salah is a better player than he's ever been right now, at least in terms of his efficiency. So he cannot go to Saudi Arabia right now.
Where does he go, though?
Well, the biggest club in the world is Real Madrid. That is where I'm suggesting. But they've got Rodrigo, they've got Brahim Diaz, they've got Arda Güler. They don't really need him in the same extent.
Liverpool fans in the comments seething right now.
But Vinicius Junior, Mbappe, and Mo Salah, like on paper, that's
would be
probably
amazing.
the best. That's the best three footballers in their own position. Well, Mbappe's not the best striker in the world, but he's probably the best all-round footballer in the world. That is the best three in the world. And Real Madrid have had that in the past with Bale, Benzema and Ronaldo, or at least they're definitely all in the discussion. Like, this is a superstar lineup that would really entice Florentino Perez. He's arriving on a free, so they'd only need to give him a signing-on bonus and maybe a 2-3 year contract. Will it happen? Absolutely not. Probably not. I can't imagine this happening whatsoever. But of all the clubs in Europe, it's the one that makes the most sense to me.
Interesting, yeah. I mean, what does it mean for Rodrigo is the only thing.
I think he'd go.
You think he'd leave? Yeah.
He'd leave.
I honestly, yeah, just a straight swap. I honestly don't know if it'd be worth it for Real Madrid. I don't know if they is like Salah is amazing and is in the form of his life once again, but is it worth Real Madrid losing a world class player who will go on to become world class? Not so sure, but like you say, Dukes, like where can Salah go from here? Like what is better than what he's got right now? There's not many options. Mina, have you got one?
Yeah, I went Real Madrid, but I said Liverpool. It doesn't make sense for him to leave. I think out of all three of the free agents, I think he would be the most difficult one to replace in terms of his efficiency, his goal contribution. I think I saw a stat that said he's contributed to over 50% of Liverpool's goals this season. How do you replace that? It doesn't make any sense. So the only other destination that would make sense is Real Madrid, but I actually just said Liverpool. I know I was meant to put a team, but I just said Liverpool because I cannot fathom the idea of him going to any other club in the world.
Yeah, fair.
So you might have to give this to...
I think we call that a draw, maybe.
Do we call it a draw?
No points awarded.
Let's call that one a draw. Because I feel like you both had Real Madrid there.
Neither one wanted to suggest it.
Yeah, and like you say, I do think with Mo Salah at this point, we've spoken for the last 6 months about who could replace Mo Salah at Liverpool. I think, with the benefit of hindsight, especially for the last 2 months, I think it's really hit home that Liverpool just don't replace Mo Salah. I think that's a mug's game to actually try and find a kind of replacement really with him. It's like kind of Man City replacing Kompany or Man United replacing Roy Keane. Those players there just isn't another one of them. And so I think that is going to be Arne Slot's biggest challenge if Mo Salah were to leave. I think the big challenge now is to make sure that he stays. But if he were to leave, the big challenge would be like, how do you reshape the side to be as effective as they are now without Mo Salah? I don't think that comes from a right winger. I think that comes from completely rejigging the style of play, or at least maximising other players within that style. I think Luis Diaz would have to come to the fore as the go-to guy, I think, in that attack, which is a big responsibility for him. I think he's got a lot of ability though. A draw there. Mina's still in the lead.
4-3 with 2 to play.
We've got a couple of other Premier League legends now to end the show. Son Heung-Min at Spurs.
I wish I hadn't saved one of my most random suggestions for this time when I need the points most of all.
Especially with Leroy Sane not coming in as well.
No, exactly.
So leaving a massive
this was my Son replacement. Son has been phenomenal for Spurs, and I think it's easily forgotten in what has been a relatively challenging season for him. I don't think he's played particularly well. I think that's fair to say. Even despite his numbers being still pretty impressive this year, he just feels a little bit short on confidence, a little bit short on that clinical side to his game we've seen in previous years. His XG per 90 is now at the second lowest of the last 4 seasons, but he is still a very good creator. And I feel like he's really still, with Dominic Solanke new to the club, with Timo Werner not quite at the level, with Kulusevski playing in midfield, there's still so much pressure on his shoulders. So fair play to him for everything he's achieved at Spurs, but I'm imagining he's moving on. I've got a little bit of a wild card. Eintracht Frankfurt.
Okay.
They have, Son has amazing experience of playing in the Bundesliga. He played there for 5 years for Hamburg and Leverkusen. In his final 2 seasons at Leverkusen, 29 goals. Not the levels that he hit at Spurs, but really was starting to find his top level in the Bundesliga. Eintracht Frankfurt are in a really interesting position. They're third in the Bundesliga as it stands. They're 9 points behind Bayern Munich, but they're only 2 points ahead of 7th place Werder Bremen. So, look, they might not qualify for the Champions League next year, but they've got a good chance. I think Leipzig are a little bit all over the place this season, especially with Xavi Simons out injured. Dortmund are sort of Dortmunding, as they tend to do. Omar Marmoush has had an insanely good season. 20 goals and assists, only topped by Mo Salah in the entirety of Europe. I think that's level with Harry Kane. It feels like he will leave in the summer. Hugo Ekitike and Son Heung-Min playing up front together in a 3-4 or 3-5-2 or a variation of that, I think is really, really exciting. Is Eintracht Frankfurt the level of club that Son would probably want to go to? That's the big question. Probably not, but then at the same time, it's a club that's on the up, that needs his level of experience. They've got the youngest average age out of all Bundesliga sides, and I think they'd love to have Son Heung-Min there. And actually, Eintracht Frankfurt, huge stadium, huge footballing city, back in Germany. It's a little bit of a wild card, but I don't think it's the worst suggestion.
Interesting. You make a good pitch there, Dukes, and I do think actually that is Son's level at this point. I think, he's been very loyal to Spurs. Also, I just don't think big enough offers came in for Son while he was at the top of his game at Spurs. I think that's something that we will look back on in years to come and think, why didn't even like a Man United come in with an offer that Spurs couldn't refuse at that time? A number of clubs who could have done with a player like him. One of the most underrated players I think of the last 10 years. Mina.
I went with a wild card.
Okay.
But it's Bayern Munich.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Because I can't look past the idea of Son finishing his career trophyless or maybe without winning stuff when he's at the peak of his performances. In terms of Bayern Munich, you look at Leroy Sane, could be out of the door. You look at Gnabry, already missed about 7-8 games this season, missed over, I think, 30 last season. They definitely need an upgrade on that left-hand side, number one. Number two, reunion with his boy Harry Kane.
I do like that.
And a nice little let's be honest, guys, a front line of Harry Kane, Elise, Musiala and Son is one of the top 5 front lines in. I mean, they've got a great front line right now. I think as well as that, just going to a team like maybe Frankfurt, a team that's still developing an identity in top flight football in this current kind of climate of football. I couldn't imagine that. I kind of explored the idea of maybe a Saudi, but I thought he's not there yet in terms of his football. And people criticizing him this season, saying he's not the best or been his best, but he still has a decent goal contribution. I think he's got 5 goals and 6 assists in, I think, like 15, 16 Premier League games. So I think you can still get a couple, I'd say about 2 years out of him. But then you look at the Sadio Mane situation when he went to Bayern Munich, and those were high expectations and it just never really worked out. So that could be a possibility again. But I like the idea of him going to Bayern Munich. I think it's less weight on his shoulders. But then again, Harry Kane's there. He's yet to win a trophy, so there's a lot of weight on his shoulders there.
I mean, I'm still backing Bayern to get the job done in the Bundesliga this year, but yeah, I love the reunion idea. I really do, and I think again as well. Yes, Son he does deserve more silverware than what he's got so far in his career. I know he's got international silverware, but yeah, I'd love him to come away with a Bundesliga title. But it's really tough. I do think Frankfurt is maybe more where he's at level wise, and I just don't know whether Bayern are just going to replace Leroy Sane with someone who's older than him and is arguably in arguably in a steeper decline than him as well. Certainly getting to around that time in his career. I also want to level things up ahead of the last thing. Not that that's the only motivation, but I really liked your pitch, Dougie. Heung-Min Son going to Eintracht Frankfurt. Let us know what you think of that in the comments. We are finishing off with KDB.
Huge.
KDB out of Man City.
Who goes first?
I mean, this if there ever was one that was like going to Saudi, this one feels like the one, doesn't it? Lots of chat about KDB going to Saudi last summer, but I'm hoping you two have come up with maybe a more creative option than this. No.
Okay. He's the only person that I had going to Saudi. I looked at Saudi. I watch Saudi League a lot, so I'm quite familiar with the players and the teams. And I think Al Hilal would be a good destination for him. He'd be an upgrade on Malcolm. He'd have Mitrovic in front of him. Salim Al Dasari, one of the best Saudi players in the league right now. I looked at Europe, and I looked at a lot of the creative outlets in different teams. I looked at Musiala, I looked at Wirtz, I looked at Dani Olmo, even though Barca can't register him. And I thought, would teams want to bring in a Kevin De Bruyne who is on the decline? He's missed quite a few games. He's missed 10 games this season. Last season, he missed 41. He is on the decline despite how great he was during his peak periods, and he's been a phenomenal player. But I look at that and think, would teams in Europe, will they be willing to sacrifice the young talents that they have in those creative outlets to accommodate a player like Kevin De Bruyne? And then I looked at, other leagues. I looked at the Italian league. I thought of maybe Juve. Then I imagined Thiago Motta's system, and I thought that would be way too intense for Kevin De Bruyne. So I said Al Hilal, and that's what I'm going to go with. I think out of everyone that's available on free agency, and there was talks in the summer about possibly a move to Saudi for him, but if it's not Saudi, then I can imagine it could be like the MLS or something like that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, he certainly suggested that a move to Saudi was would be beneficial for him. He's not been shy about the financial benefits of going to Saudi and what that would mean for like with a lot of players, what that would mean at the end of a career. Football, being a footballer is a short career, and so being able to kind of future-proof your family and all that, like that's certainly something that Kevin De Bruyne has been very public about. So yeah, Dukes, are you going down the Saudi route as well?
I haven't gone down the Saudi route. I haven't. I just think he'll be 34 in June. But I'd like to see him have one last throw of the dice in Europe, let's say. Yeah. And I think it should not be forgotten that when he does leave, and it does feel like he will leave, like Man City are quite cold in terms of decision making, in terms of their transfer dealings. I don't think, having missed, as Mina says, 51 games since the start of last season, that's too many for Man City to re-offer him a contract when he's on a huge salary at the moment. And is he worth it right now? Look, when he plays, he's definitely worth it. But in terms of what you're getting in terms of minutes per salary, as it were, he's probably not worth it right now. And look, he'll go down as, I think, probably the greatest ever Premier League midfielder when he leaves this summer. And he should do, in my opinion, 2 PFA Player of the Year awards, 6 league titles. The goals and assists speak for themselves as well. He's right up there in terms of Premier League assists, despite playing far fewer games than the likes of Lampard and Gerrard, etc. And even when he's on the pitch this year, I think he's been very, very good, and he looks like he's starting to find a little bit of form as well. Like he played really well against Leicester on just before New Year as well, in a really poor City display. But I can't imagine a club like Madrid or Bayern or Barcelona going for him for me. So he'd have to go to a club slightly lower down. And on the Son Heung-Min Eintracht Frankfurt vibes, I'm sending Kevin De Bruyne to Borussia Dortmund.
Okay.
They have lost so many stars in the last few years. Royce, Haaland, Bellingham, Sancho. I think this is, despite the fact he's entering, obviously, the twilight years of his career, it is a signing to get the Dortmund fans excited as well. The average age of their squad is 25.8. And they do have some midfielders that are towards the end of their career. Pascal Gross, Marcel Sabitzer. But there's a real lack of creativity in that Dortmund side. It's really on Julian Brandt. I think so much of that creative responsibility is on Julian Brandt, because they've got a collection of really fast forwards, but Adeyemi and Marlon, they're not particularly creative in that way. And no one's provided more than 4 league assists. They are 6th in the Bundesliga. They're only 2 points behind Eintracht Frankfurt in 3rd. I don't think he goes there if they're not playing in the Champions League, but I do think Dortmund probably do recover to finish in the Champions League spots this year, especially with the way Leipzig are playing. They're unbeaten in their last 5 games. If they could sign Kevin De Bruyne for the summer, I think that gives them a real boost. And I do think he's got one or two more seasons in Europe. I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, I think Kevin De Bruyne does have, if he can stay fit, that is, he still does have, a lot to offer in a top European league, even if, he's not at the level he was. Well, I mean, even, this time last year when he came back from injury, he gave Man City that boost that they needed to win the title. So he certainly, he still has it. I was hoping you'd go for someone. I was hoping you'd go for a team in another league. I was thinking Inter Milan maybe for KDB playing in a really dominant side.
Such an old midfield as it is, but
it is for sure. But they have shown that they can, over the last few years, that they can kind of breathe new life into older players. Under Inzaghi. Oh, this is really tough. I
like the Dortmund shout.
Yeah,
huge club.
It is still a big club. My only worry is that he'd go there and then he just wouldn't, Dortmund still just wouldn't win anything with him in the side.
Is it about winning when he's won everything? few assists
so.
in front of the yellow wall, a bit of this.
All right, Dukes, you take it.
Really?
You take it. Yeah, go on.
Oh,
Dortmund,
wow.
yeah. KDB to Dortmund. I do like. It's also one of those clubs that I, for some reason, earlier in his career, I was convinced that he'd spent half a year at Dortmund or something, but he hadn't. It was very much Wolfsburg, wasn't it? In the Bulli, where KDB, and he did have an amazing year at Wolfsburg, didn't he? Before City. Did he play for someone else in the Bulli as well?
Bremen as
Werder
well.
Bremen, that was it, yeah. So yeah, Doogie, you take it with the KDB shout.
Really good contest.
The football
though.
romantic in me was swayed by
I think
that.
you guys love a football story. I don't love a football story.
You want his wallet too well protected.
Yeah.
And fair play. I think he is the most likely of all the players we've mentioned to go to Saudi Arabia. So I think Mina was spot on with that one as well. But guys, that has been the Lowdown for another week. First one of the year. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a really fun show. And Mina, you came with excellent suggestions. 5-4 loss, but I think you've spiritually won in many ways. So thank you so much for coming on this show. Mina, if people have enjoyed watching you on this show, where can they go watch you now?
You can find me on YouTube, or if you want to keep up with my tweets, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, @MinaFootball, across all socials.
It's well worth getting involved with. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great first week or so of the new year, and we'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.